Okay, so we are on lesson 64, identifying, writing, and graphing inverse variation. We've talked about direct variation before. This is kind of the opposite. So an inverse variation is a relationship between two variables whose product is a constant. And when we say it, we say that the variable y is said to vary inversely with x instead of directly with x. The equation for an inverse variation is always y equals k over x, and k is a constant, so it's always a number. So let's just go ahead and take a look at how to identify that. So if I have y over 6 equals x, we want to try and rearrange it to see if when it's y equals, if we have a constant over x. So I'm going to get y by itself. I'm going to multiply by 6. And I end up with y equals 6 times x. That is not a constant divided by 6 like it shows up here. That is a constant times 6. So this is not an inverse variation. It's actually a direct variation, which we talked about a couple chapters ago, because it's a constant times x. Let's try another one. Let's see, we've got xy equals 5, and we want to solve for y to test this. So in order to get rid of the x, we got to divide by x, so we end up with y equals 5 divided by x. That's a constant divided by x like we have up here, so that is a direct variation. So we're going to put yes. That is an inverse variation. So we're going to put yes. Inverse is always a number divided by x. Okay, so let's talk about the product rule really quick. We've got the product rule for inverse variation. And what this says is that if we have 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, if it is a if it is an inverse variation, then x1 times y1 is equal to x2 times y2. So it's a quick way to test inverse variations. So let's look at an example. If we've got, it says if y varies inversely with x and y is 3 when x is 12. So x is 12, y is 3, and find x. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice using this. This first problem says y varies inversely with x when x is 12, y is 3. Find x when y is 9. So we don't know x, we want to find it when y is 9. So we can use this product rule that we just learned to solve this. So I'm going to treat this like 0.1 and this like 0.2. So 12 times 3 should equal x times 9. 12 times 3 is 36. To solve for x, we divide by 9. So x equals 4. So we can use the product rule to find these missing numbers. Okay. One of the last things I want to talk about is how to write an inverse variation, like how to solve and write the equation for one, and a little bit about how to graph it. So if I have it says we're going to try to write an inverse variation, and we know that when y equals 8, x equals 3. But we need to figure out what that constant is, because we're going to use our equation, y equals k over x, we need to solve for k so that we can write the rule. So y equals k over x. So we're going to plug in what we know. So we know when y is 8, we don't know k, but k divided by 3 has to be 8. So we want to solve for k. So we're going to multiply by 3 over 1. 8 times 3 is 24 equals k. So now we know k, so we can write the actual variation. So the inverse variation is y equals our constant 24 divided by x. That is our equation. Now, we can graph an inverse variation, and let's take a look at that. So this is our equation, y equals 24 over x. So now we're just going to make a simple xy table to figure out a couple of points. So x, y. Okay, so let's start in negative. So if I have a negative 6, 24 divided by negative 6 is negative 4. Negative 4, 24 divided by negative 4 is negative 6. 24 divided by negative 2 is negative 12. 0, well, 24 divided by 0 is, we don't know, it's undefined, so we can't put a point there. If I have 2, 24 divided by 2 is 12. 24 divided by 4 is 6, and 24 divided by 6 is 4. So now I've got plenty of points to be able to graph. So we're going to go ahead and put these points down. So we've got negative 6, we're going to go back 6 and down 4. Got a line in the wrong spot here. Let me fix this. This should say negative 4. Okay. Alright, we've got 1 point. Now we've got negative 4, negative 6. We're going to go back 4, down 6. And then we're going to go back 2, down 12. So we've got kind of this funky little U thing happening because it can't go to 0. It cannot meet at x equals 0 because it's undefined at that point. So then on the other side, we've got 2, 12, 4, 6, and 6, 4. And we've got another little U happening because it cannot cross at 0. It can't come anywhere near this line because x cannot be 0 for an inverse variation. So an inverse variation, a graph for that looks a little bit different than most of the graphs we've worked with this year. Okay, so today we talked about what an inverse variation is. Remember the equation y equals a constant divided by x. We talked about how to decide if it is an inverse variation. We used the product rule to find a missing value. And we talked about how to write the rule and then graph the inverse variation on your own. So if you have questions, make sure you're asking them, and I will see you in class.